All right, what's up? Good morning. We get another beautiful week to continue building better lives and careers. And this week, what I'm going to break down are 5 behavioral patterns that limit our success. So how I'm going to set up this video is in the very first part, I'm going to talk about transcendent and core behavioral patterns. And so these are core behavioral patterns that affect and permeate through every single part of our life, from personal all the way to professional. So once you understand how that core behavioral pattern works and affects all the areas of our life, then I'm going to break down what are the 5 primary behavioral patterns that a lot of people have, and they fail to see how these are affecting their success, both personally and professionally. So with that, I'm excited because I think this is going to give a lot of insight into many of the problems that all of us face that we think are separate in a certain part of our lives, but usually it's coming from a root problem that affects all areas of our life. So with that, let's get into it. All right, so let's start by breaking down core behavioral patterns, what they are, and how do they actually go about permeating through and affecting all the different areas of our lives. So the way that I like to describe core behavioral patterns is, think of your computer, your laptop. When you buy a laptop, it's either going to be running on Windows, OS X, which is Apple, or Linux or some other operating system, but there's a core operating system. And so you have that core operating system, and then on top of that core operating system, you download software or apps or a lot of these other separate things, but all of those things are dependent and run on top of the core operating system. And so our brain and our behavior, who we are as humans, is that's pretty much how our brain works, is we have a core operating system, and those then affect all of the different disciplines within our lives. So in order to first understand the core behavioral patterns and what are these created by, how do these things come to be? Because we're not born with an operating system. We're not born knowing how to see the world, how to think about things. We're not born with habitual patterns. Those are created and conditioned. So how do those become created in the first place? Because if you can understand why you do what you do, if you can understand that, then you can change it. So the first part of how is this created is we have beliefs, values, and standards. So beliefs are, they're things that we believe and determine what is real and what's not real. It's how do we see the world? Do I believe that people are good or people are bad by nature? Well, if you believe people are bad by nature, that's going to massively affect your behavior. If you believe that people are good by nature, then that's also going to affect your behavior. If you believe they're bad, you're not going to trust at first. If you believe people are good, you're first going to trust and then wait until someone breaks your trust. So massively, how we operate with people or make decisions is affected by our beliefs. Values is not you don't care about everything at equal weighting in the world. Maybe you value friends and family more than career, or maybe you value career success over, say, discretionary adventure or fun or lifestyle preferences, etc. It's everybody values things differently. And there's no right or wrong, because if you believe that someone's values are wrong, that's a belief. Who are you to judge them? Who are you to say what's right or wrong for that other person, given their life, their background, their experiences? And so our beliefs and our values affect this, and then also our standards, which is if you believe that there is a certain level of acceptability in your life for, who you believe that you are. So whether you call this standards or really identity, you can also call it identity. Who am I? We will always act in accordance with who we believe we are. If you believe that you're funny, then you're going to act in a way that, makes other people laugh. If you believe that you're an introvert and you're shy and timid, well, then when you go out and meet people, you believe that that's who you are. And so you're going to act that way. You're going to behave that way. But you were not born that way. Somehow, some way, you were conditioned over time to believe things about who you are. And because of that, you now operate that way. You behave in accordance with who you believe that you are, even though you weren't born that way. So these things are conditioned. So you can think of these together as mindset. That's really what these are. It's your mindset. And all of these are going to be influencing and determining your core behavior. And these are conditioned over time. Conditioned over time. And that's why when you do something once, it doesn't create a habit. But as you do it over and over and over and over and over repeatedly, what you're doing is you're confirming and affirming these different beliefs, values, and who you believe that you are until eventually they become core beliefs, core values, a core identity of who you are, and then those translate into core consistent behavioral patterns that affect everything. So once you have these core behavior, this pattern then affects all the different pieces of your life. So whether you call these the apps or the software programs that you're downloading to run on top of it. So for example, let's say you lack discipline, and we'll talk about that. If you lack discipline, that's a behavioral pattern. A lack of discipline is really a lack of standards. And it means that you don't believe or have enough confidence to hold yourself to something. And it's a fear of being rejected. It's a fear of not being good enough in some capacity. And so because of that, if we don't do something, well, then we can't fail. So there's a lot of core underlying beliefs and values that affect where these patterns come from. So let's go with a lack of discipline. Well, a lack of discipline is going to lead to procrastination and not doing what you know you should. Well, that's going to affect your health and fitness. You're not going to work out even though you know you should. You're not going to eat healthily, or you're going to start eating things that you're like, oh, I really shouldn't do this, but it's so good. And you do that thing because you don't have the discipline to stop yourself. And then relationships. So if you lack discipline, then there's going to be certain things that you know you should do for the relationship, even if it's not fun or it's not something you want to do, you know it's for the other person. It's good. It's giving to them. It's not for you. It's for them. Well, there's a lot of people that don't do that. Why? Because they don't have the discipline to do things that they don't want to do. And then financials. Well, a lot of people don't have their financials in order because they don't have the discipline to sit down and do the work. To sit down and say, this is important, I just need to get it done. Or their personal development. They know they should be reading or watching videos or taking a program or working with a coach or a mentor or signing up for a conference and traveling across the country to attend that conference. A lot of people don't develop themselves because they don't have the discipline for it. And then communication, decision making in your professional career. So whatever this underlying pattern is, it affects everything on top of it. So I hope that makes sense in terms of how your mindset is conditioned over time. These then create your core habitual patterns, behavioral patterns that then affect all the different disciplines in your life. So with that, let's dive into 5 core patterns that a lot of people have that are limiting their success and stopping them from becoming the absolute best that they can become in achieving their potential. All right, so the first core behavioral pattern that a lot of people have that's holding them down and stopping them from succeeding and hitting their top level is a lack of discipline. Now, a lot of people, when they hear the word discipline, it has a negative connotation. They think of it as reprimanding somebody or oh, they need to be disciplined. Well, discipline is not a good or bad thing. It just means that you're doing things that you don't want to do because you know they're good for you. And a lot of people are not willing to do that. And so there's a quote, and I can't remember who said it, but it's successful people do what unsuccessful people aren't willing to do. It's a choice. It's a choice to consistently do things that you don't want to do. Successful people do what unsuccessful people are not willing to do. It doesn't mean that the successful people want to do it. It means that they're doing it anyways because they know it's good for them. And you can replace successful with anything. Healthy people do what unhealthy people are not willing to do. Happy people do. Happy people in good, healthy relationships do what unhappy people in bad relationships are not willing to do. Replace it with anything. It's a sense of discipline. And so how do we build discipline? Because that's, I'm not motivated. I'm not inspired. And it's like, motivation doesn't last. Motivation is an in the moment, and it's usually from an external stimulus. It's usually from a person. Maybe you're motivated after this video. I don't know, but I'm not going to be here 24/7 unless you're just looping this video in the background, which don't get me wrong, I've looped motivational speakers in the background to like keep myself motivated. But discipline it's a standard. It is going back to what I talked about in the beginning. It's a standard. It's a part of your identity. It's saying that this is who I am and this is what I do regardless of the situation. If I'm tired, I still do it. If I had a bad day, I still do it. If I didn't get that much sleep last night, I still do it. If someone told me, I don't think that's a good idea, or I don't think that's possible, you can try, but it's if you believe I'm the one who figures it out, well, that's a discipline saying I will figure it out. I won't take no for an answer. I will not accept failure. I'll figure it out. So a discipline affects everything, especially relationships, communication, personal health, developing yourself to become better in your career. It all takes discipline. All right, so how do we build it? The very first thing is also the hardest part for most people. Set your alarm and stick to it. When that alarm goes off, you get up out of your bed and you start your day. Because the moment that you hit snooze, you've lied to yourself. You've broken your own promise. And there's a reason we set an alarm for a certain time the night before. Because we tell ourselves, all right, I will get up at that time. Most people lie. They start every single day lying to themselves. And that destroys self-confidence, and it also destroys any sense of discipline that we have. So when that alarm goes off, you get up. And then the second thing that I recommend is work out in the morning. Do something to move your body that's physically intensive, and it turns your body on. Because a lot of people, when you work out in the morning, you feel good, you feel alive, you feel energized. But then secondly is you know that you've just done something that was difficult. And it took discipline because you're probably not jumping out of bed going like, oh, I can't wait to work out. Very few people feel like that. So it's forcing yourself to do something that you know is good for you. And when you do that and achieve that, you then start your workday with the exact same mindset of, I'm going to just crush. I'm going to do what I need to do today because that's important to me. And I'm the person who does that. So the first core behavioral pattern is fix discipline. And there's actually a quote by Jocko Willink, if any of you follow Jocko, but he says discipline equals freedom. And it couldn't be more true because when we have discipline, we do the things that we need to do to create the ultimate freedom that we want. All right, let's move on to number 2. All right, so now the second core behavioral pattern that limits people from being successful might take you by surprise. It's saying yes to everything and people pleasing. So there was a leadership quote that I heard, and I believe it was by Donald Miller or someone else, but they said that the moment you realize that in business or in your career, what's more important is being trusted and respected rather than having everyone like you. Because the moment that you try to please everybody, it means that you stand for nothing, you have no opinion of your own, and you don't know what your priorities are, and you've spread yourself too thin. We cannot actually prioritize everything. And if you're good at what you do, and if you're wanted on multiple different teams, and a lot of people want to be a part of your life or your career or whatever, it means that you're going to have a lot of people trying to pull you in all sorts of directions. And that means that you can't focus on one thing and do it extraordinarily well, or a couple things and do them extraordinarily well. So when you say yes to everything, you don't want to be the yes guy or the yes girl. What you want to be is the prioritized thinker who knows what's important to them. And you know your values, you know your goals, and you focus on those. And if something is going to take you off path, so if you know that this is where you are and this is where you want to go, if you're the person that can get here and then all of a sudden someone says, hey, will you do this? And now you're off track. There's a lot of people who never actually achieve what they want in life or in their relationships or in their career because they're constantly saying yes to things that just come out of thin air, opportunities that present themselves, and then they immediately say yes to it without actually thinking, is that actually important? Is that actually going to get me to where I want to go? You don't want to people please, and you don't want to say yes to everything because you spread yourself way too thin, and then you actually get nothing done. It's just running around busy work. Or the other problem is that your success doesn't compound. And so a lot of people, when they do, or when they think about their careers, rather than a compounding curve of accumulating skills, knowledge, and experience that build on top of each other and compound their success and allow them to be more creative, to see opportunities that other people haven't thought of, all of that takes time and it takes focus. Well, if you're constantly saying yes to random things popping up out of nowhere and your career looks like this, and it's just zigzagging all over the place with no core theme or no clear priorities or goals or dreams, then the value is massively halved. So your success, rather than hitting your peak potential of what you could, maybe you flatline at half the ability, half of your ability. So how can we change this? How can we get better at this? Well, the very first thing is you need to know what are my priorities. Because if you can prioritize, you know what to actually say yes to, and you also know that everything else you have to say no to. And in terms of letting these people know, because a lot of people are like, well, if I say no, they're going to hate me, or they're not going to like me, or they're going to think that I don't like them. It's being very transparent and being very communicative with your priorities. So if someone were to ask me, hey, would you be willing to do this? I could say, hey, I'd love to be able to help. It sounds like you guys are working on some awesome stuff. However, right now, I'm currently focused on this, this, and this that have to be done by this, dates or deadlines or whatever. I'm going to keep focusing on that. If I have some extra time, then I'd love to be able to chip in, but I want to be very transparent with you right now. I have a lot going on and I have to focus on these things. Is that all right? Well, what are they going to say no? Or what are they going to say? No, don't focus on your goals. No, don't focus on what's important to you. They're not going to say that. Or if they do, then that's a whole nother discussion, because that person obviously doesn't respect what you have going on. So first is you need to have your priorities. And then the second is you need to be very communicative in terms of you need to be transparent with what you have going on. Because if you just say no, but you don't actually describe why, they're going to think you're just kind of, be done, be off. No, I don't like you. You got to communicate why. Why? Because when you give someone a reason, they feel a lot more, they feel it's a justified reason. So with that, let's dive into number 3. All right, so the third main or core behavioral pattern that a lot of people have that limit their success is they undervalue their health and fitness. Now, when I think about health and fitness, and there's no one way to think about health and fitness, this is just my own personal preferences, but I think that there's 4 main inputs that determine our health and fitness. In order of priority, I believe it's mindset, then sleep, then nutrition, and then fitness. And I think of fitness as in terms of like working out, lifting, running, etc. Now, why in this order? Well, the first part is mindset. Our mindset determines all of the decisions and the actions that we take. Our mindset influences when we go to bed and when we decide to wake up. How many hours of sleep do we get? And the quality of the sleep. If you're drinking or smoking or doing drugs or anything else, or if you're eating a huge meal, 30 minutes before bed, that's also going to massively affect the quality of your sleep. So you might get 8 hours of sleep, but you get 15 minutes of REM and 15 minutes of deep sleep. It doesn't matter how many hours you get, it's the quality of your sleep. And then mindset and sleep. So the third is nutrition. Nutrition it's the fuel for the body. It's what actually gives us energy, protein, carbs, fats, like everything our body needs to operate efficiently. You could have a Ferrari, but if you have that incredible beast of an engine and of a vehicle, but you're putting salt water in it, that thing's not going to run. And it's the exact same thing with our body. So many people are plugging themselves with shit food. And because of that, they feel like shit all the time. And they're constantly tired. Well, if you have poor sleep, you're eating poorly, then of course you're not going to be motivated or have the energy to go out and run or lift or do what you need to do for health and fitness. So when we think about it, we can think of it as mindset, sleep, and nutrition are probably 90% of achieving what we want in terms of health and fitness goals. If you want to lose weight, well, the first 90% is mindset, sleep, nutrition. The last 10% is only fitness. A lot of people believe that, if I need to lose weight, I need to work out 7 days a week. That's not entirely true. There's a lot of people who just fix their nutrition and their sleep and also how they make decisions in their lives around health and fitness. And over time, they're able to consistently lose it. Or if they want to build muscle, well, they're able to do that because they change how they're eating, how they're sleeping, and their decisions around how they do their fitness or how they go about building out a long-term program to actually build that. So the other part I wanted to add was the health and fitness as to why do people undervalue it. So most people don't see, or they don't believe it. because again, we all have different beliefs. So this is one of the beliefs that I have that I want to share with you. So health and fitness, I believe, is a centerpiece or a hub for all the other parts of our life. And it creates a foundation for our life and affects everything. So if we eat properly and we take care of our body and we're working it and staying healthy, well, then we're going to have a lot of energy to then give to our career, to our relationships. How many people do you hear say, oh, I don't feel like it. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. It's been a long week. Well, that's because they're so tired because they're not taking care of their engine. They're not taking care of the body that gets them through life. They're not sleeping well. So health and fitness that becomes a foundation when we master that, when we feel good and confident and we're disciplined in the health and fitness. That discipline and that energy is going to transcend into every other part of our life. So, and for example, like Tony Robbins, he teaches, if you want to massively change your life in a year, the very first thing you focus on is health and fitness. Why? Because when you feel confident, when you have energy, when you feel motivated and inspired, that carries into everything. You're gonna ask the person out. You're going to read the books. You're gonna ask for the promotion. You're gonna put in the extra hours at work. You're gonna do whatever you need to do to have the life that you have because you bring energy and confidence. So that's the third part. How can we actually start to change this? How can we begin to flip this pattern that's been limiting us? Well, the first thing is value it. Begin to sacrifice other things for better health and fitness decisions. So that means that if you're used to a nightly routine of, eating garbage carbs or something right before bed, a lot of sweets or something, well, that's going to spike your blood sugar and that's going to affect your sleep. And your body's also going to have to digest that food. And when your body is digesting food, it takes a lot of energy and blood to do that. So if you're doing that, your body cannot fall into deep sleep and restorative sleep to actually give you the energy the next day. So there's a lot of habits that you can look at, begin to change those. By valuing your health, I promise it will massively change how you feel every single day. And when you feel better, you feel awake and alive, you're going to want to start doing other things that you know are good for you. All right, so let's dive into number 4. All right, so the fourth major habit that limits our success is when we constantly compare ourselves to other people or to other competitors. Now, why is this a problem? This is a massive problem because it limits creativity. Creativity goes down the drain. And it also creates fear, anxiety, just problems in terms of self-worth. There will always be someone better than us at something specific. Always. And so if you were to look at, for example, let's just take two massively extreme examples. You have a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company and a homeless guy or girl living on the streets. Well, this homeless person is still better than the CEO at certain things. If you were to compare them, this person probably knows the geography of the area better. They probably know where the shelters are. They probably know what people to approach and what people not to approach. They know what to look for. They know the optimal street corners for posting up on in order to ask for donations. Whereas the CEO is probably better at running a company, managing teams, leadership, market dynamics. So it's like, and I know that that's a ridiculous example, but I want to show you that like if you compare yourself to someone else, they will always be better in some way, shape, or form. And that's what makes us unique. Now, when we compare ourselves to someone else for the same thing, and we're constantly comparing ourselves to all the things that are important to us, well, what that means is we're choosing to value and see the world in the same way as them. And that's not good because that, again, it destroys creativity. If you think about the entire world the exact same way as everyone else, your ideas are only going to be as good as theirs. You need creativity to create value. And the more valuable an idea is, obviously, the more you advance. So I'll give a couple examples here. So Tim Ferriss did an interview with Terry Crews, and he created a brand new type of furniture called the lily pad that no one had ever even remotely thought of. And it was because, and in the interview he talks about this, but he said, I sat down and started dreaming of the Egyptians and thinking about, man, how cool would it be to be able to create furniture today that the Egyptians would use, and what would that look like? And he just started drawing totally random ideas, created a concept that when he showed it, the entire design community was floored because no one had ever created something that was like that. And it ended up being a massive success, extremely valuable. And another example is Michael Jordan. He talks about why he was the best. And everyone asked, how'd you do it? How'd you do it? How'd you do it? And he said, it's simple. Everyone else was trying to get to where I am, where I was focused on being the best that I can be. Well, the moment that you're just focused on improving yourself every single day, and you're not constantly looking to other people for what success is, when you're determining for that for yourself, and you're constantly innovating and trying to find new ways to improve, you will naturally have to come up with different ideas. And those different ideas are going to create unbelievable value for you over an extended long period of time. So we do not want to compare ourselves to others. Instead, rather than comparing, we want to observe and just say, all right, what are other people doing and why? What's good about it? What's bad about it? What works? What doesn't? And then it's just collecting a bunch of information, and then we take all that information ourselves, and then we want to start asking ourselves the question, what do I believe is the best idea for X? And so you're generating your own solutions or your own ideas based on what has or has not worked for other people. And then once you eventually hit a point where you've hit, if you're modeling and learning from other people, you'll eventually hit a point where you're on par with what has been successful to date. And at that point, the whole sky's open because you can now unleash creativity, because you're going to hit the point where Michael Jordan was, where it's like, all right, I am now the best. How can I get even better consistently? And again, that's creativity. All right, so don't compare yourself to others. Think creatively and create for yourself your own priorities, your own values, and your own solutions. All right, so now let's dive into the fifth and final habit that is limiting us from success. All right, so the fifth pattern is not asking for help or for advice. So many of us have been raised to believe and to operate in a way where it's you need to figure things out for yourself. You need to be Mr. Independent or Mrs. Independent. And one of the things that we fail to do consistently is look for people who have already solved the problem or already achieved what it is that we want to achieve. So I talked about in the last part of this video, I talked about observing what are other people doing. Well, when we're early in our careers and we're early in our lives, oftentimes our problems have already been solved thousands, if not millions of times before us. There's a lot of people that have already achieved what it is that we want to achieve. But a lot of people believe, no, I need to figure it out for myself. Well, that is a huge waste of time and limits us in terms of what we're capable of achieving over the duration of our entire lives. So the very first thing that we want to do is realize that asking for help and advice is not an admission of failure or weakness. It's smart. It's leveraging time. It's leveraging past experience that other people have already had to muscle through and figure out the answer for themselves. We can just walk right up and ask for the answer and learn from them. So the very first thing that we need to do is realize it is not a weakness. It's not an admission of failure or weakness. Then the second thing is we need to know who are the people who have achieved what it is that we want to achieve. Because we don't want to just take anybody's advice. So for example, let's say that you want financial freedom. Well, are you going to take advice from somebody who's never achieved financial freedom? No, that makes no sense. They don't have the outcome. They don't have the achievement. So you're not going to ask for help or advice from them. Same thing in health and fitness. Has someone achieved what you want in terms of health and fitness? Well, if not, don't take their advice because they clearly haven't figured it out. Well, in terms of building a business, performing exceptionally well in a position, having a deep, loving, exciting relationship with someone. Well, are you going to take relationship advice from someone who has 3 divorces and an unhealthy current relationship? Probably not, because obviously something's going wrong there. So you need to pick your inputs. Who you do ask for help and advice from, they need to be the right sources, the right people who have the outcome that you want, because they're the ones who've obviously figured it out. And then once you have that, what you want to do is model. You need to model and replicate. Model and replicate. I know that this is going totally sideways here in terms of like slang. Anyways, you want to model and replicate their beliefs and their actions. Their beliefs, decisions, and actions. So what do I mean by beliefs? So for example, one of the people that I've massively consumed information, learned from is Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins has beliefs. He thinks about the world very differently than most people. And there's a core belief that I've learned from him that has massively changed everything in my life. And that core belief is life is happening for you, not to you. Everything happens for a reason and a purpose, and it serves you. Well, with that mindset, with that belief, you begin seeing the world differently. You begin realizing that things are happening for a reason and it's there to serve you. You might not understand it in the moment. Someone breaks your heart. You get fired. An opportunity that you got excited about didn't happen. There's a death in the family or death of a close friend. There's, something that you believe is so horrendous, so horrible. It's not until, 5 years later, 10 years later, or some period of time later, where you have hindsight's 2020, where you can look back and say, that thing had a reason. It had a purpose. So for example, someone passing away, a lot of people find faith. A lot of people find the spiritual realm that they need for their lives by realizing that there has to be some meaning to it. There has to be a next step. And so in terms of career, when something doesn't work out, in that moment, a lot of people believe this is the end. This is the worst thing ever. This is horrendous. Only to find out later on that they're now better off 3 months later, 6 months later, with something that popped up that they never could have even imagined. Or a relationship fails. Well, later on, you end up finding that other person that is the second half, or is that, excites you, and it's an even better relationship. So whenever something happens, a belief, the beliefs that you have will influence and color every decision and every action that you take. So if these people have achieved what it is that you want, that means that they had certain beliefs that influenced the decisions and actions that they took to get there. Well, you want to figure out what actions and decisions did they take, which usually you can find in their courses, their seminars, their programs, their books, anything like that. But in terms of understanding their beliefs, you have to dive in interviews. You have to dive into autobiographies, books that they've written, personal content that has come from their brain and their brain alone. Because if someone is writing about them from afar, they're not inside that person's mind. You need to get inside of that person's mind to understand how do they see the world, how do they think about things. All right, so that is the fifth and final piece that affects a lot of people, limits their success. So how do we overcome this? Again, look for the people who have achieved what it is that you want. Be willing to ask for or even pay for their help and advice, and then begin to internalize and embody what it is that they believe, as well as replicate and follow their exact instructions in terms of taking action. So I hope you found this video helpful. This is in terms of behavioral patterns and how they transcend and affect all the different parts of our lives. It's something that I'm super passionate about because I've seen countless times now with the people I've worked with, as well as just read stories about how massively people can transform their lives and careers, their health and fitness, their relationships, communication, financials, everything, when they begin to focus on the root problem, the root behavioral pattern that is happening consistently in every part of their life. So I challenge you, begin to actually think about what patterns do I have that are consistently playing out in every area of my life, because if you can identify the pattern, you can begin to change the core pattern. So with that, have an outstanding week. I'm excited for you. I hope you found this helpful, and I'll talk to you next Monday.